does. All right, we're live, Esteban. This is wild.
Oh my God, the nerves. It's finally time. It's here. It's here. Anyways, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon if you're in another time zone. Good evening if you're in yet another one. Thanks for joining us today. It's our first quarterly review from the board. My name is Esteban Kolsky. I'm the Chief Distiller for Constellation Research. Next to me, I have the amazing, the wonderful, the founder of Constellation Research, Mr. R. Wang. Ray, say good morning.
Hey there, good morning. This is great. And hey, we're really excited to have this. It's the first kickoff. When we think about the board, this is really our way of taking the thousands of insights Esteban is using with his agents to bring everything together and applying human distillation. As we say, Esteban, all the time, expertise is now a commodity, but experience is not. And this is a great example of that. So we're looking and delving into your latest monthly insights. What do we have?
Well, thanks for that intro, Ray. So you mentioned this a couple times before, and I think it's worth repeating. I get 7 agents working for me. These little guys go all over the internet and scour the webs looking for the latest and greatest information related to enterprise technology. And they tell me what I should be reading. And I read between 400 and 700 pieces of information every week, get the information that is the best from that, and then distill it into insights. And what I do is every month I publish a report. Once a quarter, I publish a compilation of the last best of the quarter. And that's what we're going to be looking at today, including a couple of the tools that we use in the report to create a framework that you should be using to deploy AI. So let's get to this wonderful thing. It started here. Like I said, this is the first quarterly update, but let's get to the interesting part. First of all, 2026. This is the year that enterprise AI moves from potential to execution. We've been playing with it for the last few years. You'll tell me that you've been doing this for like 40 years, 30 years, 20 years. I'll tell you that what we've been playing with this since November 2022 is exactly what we're actually deploying. Generative AI, agentic AI, LLMs, and custom and world models is what we're looking at. The use is widespread. 97% of organizations are using AI in one manner or another. We moved from model fascination to execution oversight. And this is the very important part, because when you're looking at where the board, when you look at where executives should be paying attention, we have a framework that is going to help you do that is going to help you take it from something that happens to something that you control. And this is the critical part of AI. Something that happens, not good, expensive, and not really good results. Something that you control is where you want to be. It all comes down really to how you actually create your work. It is not about adding AI to stuff. It's not about AI first. It's about redesigning the work you work, redesigning the context that you apply to that, and then putting in place the right control so you can monitor, so you can observe it, so you can actually do the right thing. And finally, as a summary of where we are, the execution weaknesses, the problems that you're going to be finding in your execution are surfacing a lot faster than the technical limits. If you look at what's available today with AI, if you look at what Claude or Anthropic, if you look at what Charles is my ChatGPT trained researcher, but if you look at what ChatGPT and OpenAI and even Mistral and all these other models are doing, we're seeing that they can do much more than we actually give them credit to. Of course, at the same time, we're seeing that they have limits, and what we want to do is we want to try to avoid those limits. So let's get into the grittier things here. Where is the value so far? Pilots. We did a lot of pilots, lots and lots of pilots. We spend a lot of money and time doing pilots, and the pilots are not the way that you're going to succeed in this. Johnson & Johnson, about a year and a half ago, decided to go from 13,000 pilots to 3 deployed solutions of AI. Walmart, which is probably one of the most advanced companies adopting AI today, moved from the tens of thousands of pilots to just running 6 or 7 different projects in AI. This is not the way you're going to succeed. And the pilot to rollout model, we're going to do a pilot, see if it works, and then deploy it. That's not going to get the job done. The real work, according to everybody that I've been reading and everyone who's been doing right, is redesign, then governance, and then scale. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't do it in that fashion. The redesign means your processes need to be redesigned to accommodate AI. Not add AI to your processes, but the process needs to be redesigned. The success is going to come from that. You think you're spending too much money on tokens? Redesign your processes, and you won't be spending as much money on tokens. When you get past that, get into governance. And we have a slide that we're going to tell you where governance is coming from. And then finally get to scaling. Scaling is the most important part, but scaling requires an infrastructure that more than likely you don't have in place yet. It requires an ability to do things that you don't have in place unless you go through the redesign process and understand what you're going to do it. BCG, Boston Consulting Group, has a framing that assigns 70% of the value that AI can create for the organization to people, process, and change management rather than algorithms. Algorithms are easy to do. We've been doing it forever. I was doing them 40 years ago, 20 years ago. Algorithms are an easy thing to do. It's not the algorithm. It's how you actually deploy it and how you put it into place. And finally, the best examples you're going to find today are still going to be in coding. They're still going to be in service, but emerging more and more tightly scoped operations. We're seeing a lot of results in supply chain when it comes to optimizing specific components of it. We're seeing a lot of value in manufacturing. We're seeing a lot of value in planning and execution. It has to be very, very tightly scoped, and it has to be very, very much focused on what you're trying to do. So let's get into the tools that we're actually going to share on this. First, this is the framework that we use for governance. I'm sure you've seen many of these pieces all over the place, but the reality is that, if you want to deploy this and you want to govern it properly, you need to actually allocate projects to each one of these boxes. Cyber, of course, cybersecurity, but also infrastructure. Your infrastructure is not ready to deploy what it needs to be deployed. Compliance, this is very, very important for compliance. You have the privacy, you have to deal with privacy, but more important than that, you have to deal with confidentiality. There's a huge difference between privacy and confidentiality. Confidentiality is how you manage the data so that only the right data gets used. Privacy means respecting your users' wishes for what to do with the data. But you need to have answers for both of those. And then finally, like we said before, people, process, tools, and metrics, all this stuff is the basics of AI, and you need to do this separately. Each one of these is going to have a project. Each one of these is going to have somebody in charge. And each one of these is going to be part of what the CEO is going to be using for their dashboard on how to understand AI. I am not going to read the whole screen to you. That doesn't make sense. If you're here, that means you can read. So thank you for coming. One more thing that I forgot to mention earlier. If you want to ask a question, we had time for Q&A, so to have discussions in the end of this. If you want to ask a question, please feel free to put it in the comment section in LinkedIn or YouTube or on X or wherever you're seeing this. We're going to see all the comments. We're going to see all the questions. And we're going to have a conversation at the end of this. As I was saying, I'm not going to read the screen. I'll give you some time to read through it. But basically, these domains are how the CEO is monitoring AI today. 70% of CEOs decided that none of the people in their team were doing a good enough job, with this strategy for AI, and their boards were not doing a good job with the strategy for AI. So they took upon themselves the concept of actually deploying a strategy for AI. And to deploy that strategy, they need help for the team, the direct reports, and this is where the help is going to come from. Any questions that you have about this, any area that you want to go in deeper, please put it in the comments, and we'll discuss this at the end. But the CEO is not the only person who's going to be actually in charge of this. We also need to have a spectrum on how we're going to adopt this. We started doing this in earnest in 2023. Yes, you were first. You were there in November 2022. You were the first ChatGPT user, I'm sure, but that was great. But now, let's get seriously into the enterprise. As it relates to the enterprise, we started a couple of years ago exploring and experimenting what we're doing. Today, we're in what we call bounded production, which means we realize we need guardrails. We realize we need boundaries. We're doing things in a different way, and we need to do it right. So we're into bounded production, getting into redesign. The leading adopters of AI are into the redesign process and trying to do the scale for what they're doing. And finally, you're going to get to the point that AI is part of your infrastructure. It's not AI first, it's AI everywhere. But to do that, you need to get to infrastructure. And the only way you're going to get to infrastructure is by actually, leveraging technologies and getting things to right. Now, a couple more things before we get to the questions. As you go through this, you're going to realize that AI is not the end of everything. There are other technologies. Some of them will actually assist AI. Some of them will actually replace or make it different. And that's what you need to actually look into the future. What we have here is a tool that we created, which is a Frontier Technologies dashboard that we publish on a quarterly basis. The Frontier Technologies dashboard is updated once a year with new and upcoming technologies that we should consider for the enterprise. You see on screen, and again, I'm not going to read the whole screen to you, but you see on screen the ones that we're tracking right now. We have agents, scouring the internet, looking for information on all this stuff. We read everything that comes about this. And I can tell you that, the time to scale is based on conversations that we had with technology executives that tell me what they're doing in their organizations. The one that you probably heard the most about which is inference and edge computing. They're coming, but they're not really ready at this point to be rolled out at the enterprise at a high level. The same thing for quantum computing and some of the other things that you see on screen. Now, if you want to really understand how ready they are or how ready they are not, here's the thing that matters. This is, again, part of what we publish once a quarter, which is the readiness snapshot. We look at projects that are deployed, we look at what different organizations are doing, and we give you an idea of what you need to be focused on. Right now, to be fair, only confidential computing and robotics are ready to be deployed at a pilot level or in very, very selective use cases. Quantum computing, post-quantum, crypto, all this stuff is still in the horizon. You can explore, you can investigate, but you're not going to be ready to do that. The one that is actually been a surprise for me is digital twins, to be honest. I'm hearing more and more companies doing digital twins, but I don't hear anybody yet having launched digital twins beyond the exploration stage. There's a lot of value that's coming in technologies that are not AI, but to get all this stuff accomplished, you need to have an infrastructure that is well put together in place. And that infrastructure needs to have AI as a core component. So as you go through that spectrum that we analyzed before, as we go from bounded deployment to scalability and so forth, we need to get to the point that this is part of the infrastructure. Now, finally, because I told you I would get out of here in 15 minutes, what are your insights to take away? What's happening in 2026? In addition to reading everything my bots and my agents give me, I have conversations. I have hundreds of conversations every month with executives everywhere. I talk to my peers at Constellation. I read everything that comes out there. And what I can tell you is that ongoing discussion is no longer about whether or not AI matters. We're not going to be having this conversation about whether or not AI matters. AI is done. It's part of the enterprise going forward. We have a couple of decades to get it right. We have 2 or 3 years to get it in place and scale. The cycles have compressed. What used to take us 5 to 10 years is taking us 2 to 3 years today. Technology is advancing fast enough that we need to worry about that. But the sequencing of how we deploy AI is what matters, not whether AI matters or not. Second point of strategy and planning for 2027. What we're going to be discussing for next year is like few initiatives. Let's pick the places where AI will really play a role. I'm not just talking about generative AI. I'm talking about traditional AI, advanced analytics, about creating your own custom models, creating world models, doing things in a way that's different. Let's find the right metrics and tightly control them. Let's not talk about tokenomics. Let's talk about how we control costs based on what we're trying to do. What's the value that it brings to us? Vendors are starting to deploy their own initiatives for pricing. So how is that going to change the way we do AI? We talked about a SaaS apocalypse last month when all the SaaS vendors were supposed to disappear because AI and cloud is going to replace them. That's not the way to do it. But let's find the right metrics and then clean governance. I give you the governance spectrum. Use something like that in your organization. Final part, 5 questions that I want you to take away from here. First, where does the value come from? How do you derive the value? How do you interpret value? What is value for you? Each process will have a different value proposition. So you have to do that in a different way. Second, what is a control plane? How are you going to be controlling all this? Not just governance, but what's going to control the metrics and the technology and the deployments and the people and the hiring and the training and the implementation of the infrastructure and everything that we were talking about. Third, very, very important, and one that is playing a key role right now in my conversations. Over the last 2-3 weeks, pretty much every conversation that I had has been about cost. Tokenomics is taking control again on the enterprise. I wrote my report last year in August and September, covering tokenomics, the economics of tokens in detail. Gen AI uses tokens. LLMs use tokens. Anything that uses a pre-trained transformer will use tokens. Tokens are not the best way to go about this, but they're the way that you're actually going to leverage outside providers. So figure out the cost models. Fourth, who owns the decision? I told you, 70% of CEOs own the decisions today, right? So let's change that. Let's not put everything on the CEO's shoulders. We got to do better. CIOs, CTOs, CAOs, CHROs, Everybody should be part of the decision making for their own part of the enterprise. And finally, and because I'm 3 seconds over, finally, what are the third-party dependencies that we need to worry about? How do we play with hyperscalers and external providers? How do we play with the consultants? How do we play with everybody who's trying to do this? These are the questions that you're going to take away on the discussion that we had, and you're going to figure out how to deploy AI for today and for the future. Thank you very much for listening. Ray, what do we have to say right now? Do we have any questions?
No, this is great, but we got some good comments here. We see Tracy here talking about the sequencing is really important, picking the right things that actually make a difference in your business. So that's really important. That's a great comment to add to it. Let's take the presentation off screen and then we'll be able to get to a direct conversation. One of the things that's really interesting is at our conference, March 16th through 18th, a few weeks ago, we had 120 public CEOs and board of directors at the Constellation Futures Forum, and you were there interacting with the CEOs and public board of directors. There was a very interesting comment on who the new chief AI officer is. Who is that, Esteban?
It's funny that you mentioned that because things leading to the conference and in the last week have changed the way we look at the chief AI officer. I don't know if you noticed this, but most organizations went from not having a chief AI officer to putting somebody internally who was part of the technology team to be the chief AI officer, to realizing that what you need to do is you need to find somebody who really truly understands AI to be your chief AI officer. So the skills have been changing, right? I heard a lot of conversations over the last month and a half with organizations that are looking for the first chief AI officer. So who is it? It's not the person who's going to run the AI strategy. That's still going to be up to the board and up to the CEO for the most part, at least for now. Eventually, it will come down to the chief AI officer, but it's a person who's going to be doing coordination of the sequencing. If we're going to be doing sequencing, if we're going to be doing this in a way that makes sense, pick the right projects and deploy them, we need somebody to keep track of everything that's going on and everything that's being said. And that's what the chief AI officer does.
Whoa, yeah. We have both the chief AI, we had the AI forum and the Constellation Futures forum side by side, back to back. And the conversations among the CEOs were like, they're starting to play that role. It was very interesting to see the CEOs actually playing a chief AI officer role as that became a boardroom level discussion. And so we're seeing a lot of the coordination on both ends, which is really exciting in terms of where we're headed. Now, you also mentioned something that was important here about the fact that the way organizations should be looking at the technologies that they're putting into place. You've always said this, where the business requirement comes first and then the technology follows. What mistakes were people making earlier by putting in technologies first? Because we see a lot of that every time we get to a new wave or to a new era.
So that's so funny because you and I we've been doing this for a couple of years, right? 3 years you, I think, and 2 years me, because we're that young. So, but we've been doing this through ERP and CRM and HR and
Cloud,
CX. Everything. Yeah, we've been doing, and everybody does the same. They get excited about the technology, they throw it out there, and they say this is going to change the way we do everything. And they throw technology, and then they spend too much money, too much time, and they don't really get any value out of it, right?
Well, last year everyone was trying to hire prompt engineers. Anyone trying to hire one now?
Remember that? Yeah, I changed my LinkedIn CV to be a prompt engineer for about 2 weeks. So I was looking for a job, man. No, but seriously, the thing is,
what skills should we be looking for? What skills should people be trying to hire?
It's actually timely that you asked this, because I started publishing a 4-part series on my blog last week. Started with the pricing, but the thing that most people don't realize is when we talk about agentic AI and when we talk about skills, right? What the agents are doing is they're replacing the traditional sneakernet. Remember the sneakernet?
I do.
So the sneakernet became the agentic AI now. That's basically what it is. We build agents to tie different pieces of information from different places together.
We were joking about a swarm of function calls with cron jobs. I mean, this is really what an agent is at the very ultimate level. Yeah. But before I keep asking questions, we got a good one here from actually Tasker. Let's go to Taskers first before Jerry. Taskers is, would a chief AI officer also play the role in the end-to-end governance in your view? And Tracy also mentions she's seeing trusted CIOs are taking that chief AI officer role. Yeah. So what are you seeing on this end?
Absolutely. That's going to be almost entirely their entirely agenda. Is going to be the governance. I mean, if you have if you go back to the deck, I don't want to put the deck back on the stage, but if you go back to the deck and you look at the slide that we had about the the governance framework. Let's put it on stage or the fun of it. I hate to talk about something and not have it there. But if you go back to the deck and look at the governance framework, this is going to be the agenda for the chief AI officer. The CEO is going to say, here, that one you power to manage all this stuff. And this is what you're going to have to be doing. So
we got another great question here. We got Jerry's question. Let's pop it up here. And he's talking about what AI usage today is mostly focused on personal. When does it get to the enterprise level? I'm here at a CIO summit. I can't talk about where, but we're having the exact same conversation on they're seeing the personal productivity, but it's not helping at the team or enterprise level. So where do you see that popping up?
Let's go back to the other slide. Hey, we have slides for everything. How about that? That's amazing. That's amazing. I really truly believe that if you're really looking at the enterprise, for the most part, the enterprise today is between bundled production and redesign. So to answer Jerry's question on when the enterprise is going to take full advantage of AI, that's going to take a while. It's going to be a 10 to 20 year process for most organizations. Leading edge companies like like Marriott and Walmart, they're doing a fantastic job with AI for the last 20 years, are actually getting there today. But if you haven't been doing AI for 10, 15, 20 years, you're not going to be there.
We got a comment from LinkedIn that said, this is exactly where most AI projects stumble. The challenge is not AI innovation itself, but the architecture and operational groundwork that needs to happen first. As AI adoption scales, it's crucial to embed it into existing workflows, decision-making structures, and compliance controls. It creates more friction. Otherwise, it creates more friction than value. The next phase of AI maturity is not about adding more AI capabilities, but about designing a unified architecture where AI can work safely at scale and in alignment with business objectives. Is that something that you think?
I saw that comment earlier, and 1,000%. The thing is, whoever the commenter was nailed the core concept, which is friction. The process of embedding AI in the enterprise is about removing friction. That's basically it.
Got a comment here from Gurvinder. Given that trust and data security are still the biggest hurdles to enterprise AI adoption, how are enterprises successfully addressing these concerns with both employees and customers? Thanks, Gurvinder.
So Gurvinder, we don't have 2 hours, so I'll do a very simple short. I'll do the Ray lightning round on this, right? For data, we're going to introduce another concept that Ray and I introduced to the enterprise a few years ago, which is a chief digital officer, the chief data officer. You need to have one in place to manage the data. And for security, oh man, we're not even getting started on that. The whole Anthropic mythos debate that is upcoming, that is coming up, and the new ChatGPT 5.4 cyber. We're just getting started on security. There's no way we're going to be able to secure this stuff at any time. So,
yeah, no, these board level issues and CEO levels are real. I was just in this meeting and someone mentioned that their company created a AI committee now on the board level. So you typically have audit and comp and governance, and now there's an AI committee. You're starting to see start to take place in public companies. So we'll see more of that popping away. So
it's funny that he mentioned an AI committee, because we really haven't been doing this well at the board level. A couple numbers that matter here, right? Less than 20% of board members, excuse me, less than 20% of board members think that they have enough knowledge or understanding of AI to effectively advise the organization, and more than 2/3 of CEOs think that the boards are not doing a good job of advising them on AI. So it's very timely to create an AI committee, but it's even more timely to get education through products like the board. Sorry, shameless plug, couldn't help it.
No, we're definitely seeing that. Look, boards basically have a tough challenge. It's really getting people tech enabled. AI is only one part of the story. That's a lot of what we're doing here. How do people subscribe to what you're doing right now, Esteban? Because we're putting in some new products and services. You're part of that. The conference was part of that. Share a little bit about that.
So the board is a subscription service that you basically sign up and purchase for on a yearly basis. It comes with a monthly report that has 2 pieces. One is the long report, to call it something, that is basically about 15, 20 pages of information compiled every month for everything that happened in the enterprise. To be fair, the board looks at all the technologies, but right now, for some reason, we seem to be spending more time on AI. It's amazing, right?
Well, 2 years ago, it was cyber, right? That's all they were worried about. Getting.
And we looked at We looked at AR, augmented reality, and virtual reality, and we looked at almost the internet back in the day and the personal computer. But subscribing to the service gives you access to the report, gives you access to me once a month or a couple times a month if you want. We can sit down and have a conversation, have an exchange of emails about whatever I said that matters to you and expanding it to your organization. Once a quarter, you get access to this. This is the first one. We're making it accessible to everyone. More than likely, by the next one, it won't be accessible to everyone. So if you're part of the service, you get it.
I don't think we should put Larry's comments up, but
we should always put Larry's comments.
Not the committees. No. Larry's Insights, our editor-in-chief, executive editor-in-chief there. So just so people know. Hey, another great question, Tasker, you're asking, which is federal and state policies are conflicting with each other. What's the government's perspective for this? And what would you recommend a board organization do to manage these issues?
Tell you what, I'll give my perspective, but this is more of a question that falls on your side, if you don't mind, because you're spending more time as far as Constellation is concerned on the side of the overall politics and government and how it all comes together. But the friction at the state and federal level is not going to be resolved anytime soon. It's not a question of who's in the administration and who's doing what. It's a question that government moves at a pace that is well below what we need for this. Like I said earlier, cycles have compressed. We have 3 to 5 years to get this done, and 3 to 5 years will basically bring Larry's comment back, which is government will put committees in place to study the problem and provide solutions to AI. But what are you seeing?
There's 1,700 pieces of legislation just in the U.S. between federal, state, local on AI. So something has got to get resolved at some point because that is not sustainable. So.
What do you think? Should we do a federal or should we do it at the state level? What's your opinion on this?
Let's just have our sovereign clouds take care of it.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about sovereign clouds. Okay, let's talk about sovereign clouds. Where is this information going? Who owns your information? Who has access to it? I mean, the last part of the question that Gurvinder had on security, I talk about confidential computing, about being ready for the enterprise. And this is one of the things that most people don't understand, but they need to understand. Confidential computing is going to be essential if you want to do sovereign cloud, if you want to do, access to information and enabling the right agents to get to the right place and all this stuff.
Well, Esteban, I can't wait till next month to see what you have next. Every time we get a subscription out the door, it is very interesting. And so you're going to see this. We're going to put this together. And some of these will be public. Some of these will be private. This is really designed for members for the subscription. But you guys can get a sneak peek on this episode of what to expect going forward. Esteban, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. God, this is so hard. Subscribe to the service, of course, but that's because I had to say it. But more important than that, just realize that you're starting in year 2 or 3 of a 20-year cycle. There's no way, even with compressed cycles, nobody's going to get this right in the near future.
That is wild. Well, hey, thanks for the final thoughts. For folks that are paying attention, definitely check out the board. If you've got access, you'll see it there. You also see it in the LinkedIn group. For folks that are interested in working on the board, let us know. We'll definitely be able to catch up with you. You can send stuff to esteban@constellationr.com. And of course, reach out to your salesperson if you're working with us already. So, hey, thanks a lot, Esteban.
Thank you, Ray.